Okay guys, welcome to part 2. In this video we will add our elephant. So we're going to drag and drop our stock photo from Unsplash and position it so the tusks are just below the horizontal guide and the trunk is vertically centered. As before, since the smart object created by Photoshop only points to a JPEG, we'll convert it to a smart object again to make it point to a PSB file. Double click to edit the smart object, and now we will use the pen tool to create a path around the elephant. I like to turn off snap and zoom in closely when I do this. I'm going to speed this bit up, but if you're unsure how to use the pen tool, be sure to search YouTube as there are loads of great tutorials on the pen tool. We can now complete our path, make a selection from it, and then use this to create a layer mask on the elephant to isolate it from the background by clicking the layer mask button in the bottom right. Since we made the initial smart object into a PSB file earlier, we can save it without having to flatten everything and keep the transparency. Going back into our main canvas document, we can see our smart object has updated and the elephant is isolated. We can add our camera raw filter to do some preliminary correction as we did with the background. To begin with, I'm going to cool down the overall colours to get our elephant more grey. I'm then going to bump up the texture and clarity to bring out the details in the skin and reduce the contrast by a similar amount so the natural contrast of the image doesn't go too high. I also like to do this when compositing in general so the image is fairly flat, as we will add in our own shadows and highlights later. I'm also going to take out some of the orange and yellow tones to make it as neutral as possible, and finally reduce the noise and bump up the sharpness. This really helps bring out the details of the skin. Save out our camera raw adjustments, and already the elephant colour tones look more natural against our stormy sky, as it was way too warm looking before. Our next task is to separate the head from the body. Let's duplicate the elephant with Command J and then use our trusty pen tool to make a path. The goal here is to get the head, tusks and trunk into a separate layer, so go around these areas with the pen tool. Finally, let's complete the path, create a selection and add a layer mask onto the duplicated elephant layer. Our final job is to fade the body off just below the top of the trunk. As with the background, let's add a layer mask to the first elephant layer, which is the body, and using a black to white gradient on the layer mask we can fade the body off. Lastly, we want to add some depth, so let's duplicate the solid colour adjustment layer at the bottom of the layer stack by holding Option and dragging the adjustment layer above the elephant's body. Clip it to the body by holding Option and clicking between the two layers. We can then reduce the opacity to roughly half, so we just tint the body.